Hey up, spookies. Did you miss me?
It's all for you!
Beware the moonlights.
An excellent day for an exorcism.
I'm your number one fan.
Hey up! It has been a little while since I have recorded anything and put it out into the universe on YouTube and as part of the podcast. I have had a little bit of a break. And when I say a bit of a break, it started off as an 8-week break because I really felt like I needed it. And that doubled really unexpectedly, totally unplanned. But I'm back and it is very lovely to be doing this again. I wanted to use this not to cover a film particularly, to cover a genre or anything like that. I really wanted to acknowledge the fact that I have been absent for like the last 16 weeks, 4 months, whatever it's been. Explain a little bit why. Not that I have to justify taking a break, but talk a bit about what I've been doing because I have been really, really busy. Talk a bit about what's going to change a little bit going forward to prevent me from having to take a really long break like I just have done. And I thought we'd catch up on some films as well. So we'll do that towards the end. But I'm so glad to be doing this again. I've been itching to do this for the last couple of weeks. I actually tried to record something a couple of weeks ago to get back into this, and none of my software would work. And I was like, come on. I've been waiting to do this for like 4 months now. And at the point where I finally sit down and just want to chat shit, of course nothing works. Of course it doesn't. So clearly cursed myself by having a little break. But yeah, so where have I been? Here mainly. I really wish that I'd been off to some like tropical country for 4 months and working on my tan. This is fake, clearly. But I haven't been. Like I said, I did need a bit of a break. I am I'm so neurotic. I'm way too much of a perfectionist. Every single episode that I was putting out before, I'd started with the intention of, when I created this podcast, only having like a Word document open next to me with a couple of bullet points. And that is how the podcast started. But because I'm such a perfectionist and I'm so neurotic and I'm so self-conscious and aware of what I'm saying, what I'm doing, what I look like, this Word document of bullet points had turned into a script. And I'm not joking. If I was going to talk about a film or a genre, then every single talking point was fully scripted out the way that I would say it. And I wouldn't necessarily read from the script, but the amount of prep work that I was doing just to sit down and talk about stuff that I love was, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was clearly adding a level of pressure to this situation that I really didn't need. And I think, kind of reflecting on the last few months that I've had away, I have been creating content. I've been making content on TikTok and on Instagram, and I've kind of fallen into just doing stuff on the fly. And that's exactly what this episode is. Like, I've got 3 bullet points next to me that says, where have I been? What have I been doing? Talk about films. And that is as scripted as I am being. You are getting me just off the cuff talking about whatever is in my brain. And that's the way that I've been creating content for the last few months. Not really intentionally. I can't even remember how it happened. But I'm really enjoying just being able to record stuff and say what's going on in my brain. And if I have an idea, just kind of jot a couple of ideas down in my phone and go, okay, I can talk about that and I can talk about that. Okay, that sounds like a video. Let's record it, edit, put it out to the world. Done. Move on with my day. And before, especially like on the social media side, I was bulk recording content. So every few weeks I'd have a Saturday or a Sunday where I dedicate that to content, I would just sit and record and record and record. And then the following day, I would just spend all day editing, which is on one hand a really great way of doing things because then I don't have to think about content for a few weeks. But that one weekend where you are spending a full day recording and then spending a full day editing, that is really labor intensive, and that required a lot of prep work as well. So like I said, I don't really know what the shift has been there. I think maybe a little bit of it is my self-confidence has certainly improved over the last few months. I've been on a bit of a health journey personally, losing weight and drinking loads more water and just generally looking after myself a little bit more, which I hadn't realized I'd neglected to do for quite a few years. And I think that in turn has made me feel not just confident in how I look now, because I'm not confident in how I look. It's more about what's going on in the inside. It's somehow made me feel a lot better internally as well. I think the other thing that I hadn't quite realised that I've done a lot of reflecting on is I have a real huge fear of letting people down. I don't know if it's older sibling syndrome, you know, like being the big sister and various different things that have gone on throughout my life in just needing to be that reliable person. And what that means is the perfectionism. But I think the other thing that it meant is after I'd taken a little break away from this, I had built it up so much in my head about coming back and it needing to be perfect. And okay, while I've been away, this film's released, that film's released, that film's released. So I've got to do an episode for every single one of those. And I've got to start an episode on a different subgenre. And I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And suddenly this list had grown in my brain as to what I needed to do. Not because of anyone else, because of me. And the pressure that I put on myself because I don't want to let people down. So that in part is the reason why it took me a little while to come back to this. I just built it up way too much in my brain. And I think I'm in a bit of like screw it mode now. Like I said, just recording content on the fly and just putting it out there because I want to have conversations about film. So it probably leads me quite nicely onto some of the stuff that's going to change a little bit with the series, with the show. Oh my god, that's cringe calling it a show. It's just me yabbering on the internet. What I'd committed to before was an episode, I think it was every single Monday, talking about a different film within a certain different subgenre. I was then doing a weekly news episode on YouTube only, so just rounding up all of the latest horror news. And then I was also doing an episode dedicated to every single big horror release that was coming out. I'm just a knobhead, really, because that's a lot of work. And I didn't realise until I'd started doing it that is a lot of work. So I am still going to be doing regular episodes. My intention is still to do them weekly. But there might be weeks where I just can't do one. And that's because I work full time. Some of the stuff that started happening in my personal life, which I will talk about in a second, sometimes that gets in the way a little bit and I'm always going to prioritize that stuff. So my commitment is to do an episode every week, but it might be that I skip a week due to other stuff that is going on in real life, because that exists. And I'm not going to do the horror news like on a Friday. I think I was doing it before because that's the weekend and I'm really enjoying my weekends, actually. Me and my husband being able to go and do stuff. But if there is some really key horror news, like if we get a huge trailer announcement, if we get a film announcement or a casting announcement or something like that, and I really want to talk about it, then of course I'm going to plonk myself down in front of this camera. I'll record something and I'll put it out, but I'm just not going to commit to a timeline on it. And then for any new releases, I will talk about the films that I feel I want to talk about. And again, that's something that I've been doing with social media. There's been a lot of films that have released where I've gone, yeah, it was okay. like, there's nothing else to say about it. There's certainly nothing from my perspective that I feel like I could add to any of the conversation that's going on. So in a very roundabout way, you are going to get regular content from me. I pinky promise. I am going to take regular breaks as well. So I will be communicating when that is, because again, sometimes work, that is a priority for me. That is my income. I have a full-time job. Sometimes that really picks up and I need to calm things down on my social media side of things. So wow, I've waffled on for a really long time about where I've been and why I'm so useless and how things are going to change. I sound like a really toxic ex-girlfriend. And I really hope you don't think of me like that. But one of the things that I did want to talk about is, while I've been on this break, there's been like 15 or 16, probably more than that actually, quite big films that have been released. I think the last episode that I did was Final Destination Bloodline, so you can go back and watch that episode if you choose. And we kind of went into a bit of a silly season over the summer, where it just felt like there was film after film after film that was releasing. And what I thought I'd do, I've written 15 of them down, key ones that I thought I could very quickly talk about and give a very quick, here's my thoughts. So we are catching up on these films, but you're not getting the full deep dive that I was doing. I am going to mention Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, because that has literally just released on Netflix over last weekend. I went to see it at the cinema on the Thursday, and then I watched it on the Friday morning while I was working, and then I watched it on the Friday night. So in the space of 24 hours, I watched it 3 times. So I am going to do a bit of a deep dive on Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. I've published a video on my socials and also on YouTube Shorts. If you want to watch that, it's all of the things that you might have missed with Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Like, why does Victor drink fucking milk all the time? Why are Elizabeth's clothes the colours that they are? Why is Victor wearing these gloves? Like, there's loads and loads of stuff that I go into loads of detail on. It's doing silly numbers on social media at the moment, just me waffling about how much I love this film. So naturally, I'm going to do a longer form episode on Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. So keep an eye out for that. But I want you to cast your mind back to the summer. So not long after Final Destination Bloodlines, we had Dangerous Animals. Oh, sharks. I love sharks. I've been fascinated with sharks since I was little. I had posters all over my bedroom of sharks. Most little girls have boy bands, and I had, I remember one in particular was like all the different species of sharks. And I had shark books and I had shark VHS. Not a lot has changed, actually. If you look in my background, as an aside, I've probably picked totally the wrong time to come back to this, because you can probably see around me there are shed loads of books and DVDs and Blu-rays and 4Ks, and across here that is all VHS under my masks. And then I've got art prints stacked up. There are art prints back here. That's a Quavers bag. Don't look at that. There's shitloads of stuff going on in this room. This is our office. I've run out of space. I've run out of space. I've been buying a lot of physical media. I've fallen back in love with buying physical media. I sometimes go to charity shops and pick up loads of random horror DVDs for like 30p each. Who's not going to buy them for that price? But then for some of my favourite films, I have started picking up Blu-rays. I've got a number of different friends. Darren from Mr. Sandsman is one of them, who has taken the piss out of me before for buying DVDs when I should be buying Blu-rays because the quality's so much better. And okay, I'll eat humble pie because yes, it is. And I've started with Blu-rays. So I'm upgrading some of my collection to Blu-rays. And And that is what is stacked around me at the moment, is loads of physical media, because I have a huge storage unit in our living room and it's full. It's completely full. So this is overflow. And what we're having to do is buy even bigger shelving units to go in the living room so that then I can sort out my physical media collection. So what it does mean is this background is going to change quite a lot over the coming weeks. I think probably by the beginning of December, we'll have sorted this room and the living room out, like with new carpets and shelving units and stuff like that, which is very exciting. It's a massive job because I think I've got something like 700 films in my collection now, which is just bonkers. It's doubled this year. Weirdly, Dangerous Animals, going back to the films that I was going to talk about. See, this is why I used to be scripted, because I just go off on a tangent. But going back to Dangerous Animals, weirdly, I do not have a physical media copy of that. So I should probably add that to my list next time I go to HMV. But yes, this did release back in the summer. I think it was like June time. I was very fortunate to be invited along to an early screening. That's probably going to be something that you're going to hear a lot as I go through these films, because it's one of the reasons why I've been so busy. For some reason, I've clearly been added to some PR list somewhere and I've been invited to a lot of events. And who am I to say no? I'm just a Yorkshire bird, and if someone invites you to something, a fancy screening in London, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. So I'm just putting a little caveat out there. I consider myself very fortunate. And the main reason I go is because I want to see the fucking films early. So Dangerous Animals was one of those. We had a really great night, made even better by the fact that it is a fantastic film. And it's not a shark film either. It is a serial killer film. This is about a guy named Tucker who captures a woman, a surfer named Zephyr. And basically, it's a great big game of cat and mouse on board a ship where Tucker is trying to feed Zephyr to the sharks. And it was fantastic. Is it a 5-star film? No, it's not. Is it a fuckload of fun? Yes, it is. So if you haven't seen Dangerous Animals yet, give that one a watch. I think I'm going to be watching that every summer now. It's going to get chucked in with Jaws and Texas Chainsaw Massacre as like my summer watches, because I had so much fun with it. Now, another film that came out in June time and is attached to probably my absolute highlight of this year. Like, when I think about it, I was talking to someone about it I was talking to my husband about it the other day, and I got upset talking about it. Not from a, oh my God, I'm so sad perspective, but a really proud moment, a really what the fuck moment. But 28 years later came out, and I was very lucky to be able to go to the world premiere in London. Took my very good friend Emily along with me. Ray Fiennes was there, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Jodie Comer, Danny Boyle was there, and we got to walk the red carpet. We got all glammed up for the evening, and then we got to watch the film, which is phenomenal. It is in my top films of this year. It is such a tonal shift from 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later. It is very much about the human behavior following the outbreak. I mean, it's years later. 28 days and 28 weeks are fairly close together in terms of a timeline. 28 years is a huge stretch from where we were with those two films. And it just has so much heart and so much emotion that I loved the fact that it was a tonal shift. I loved that it was set in the north of England, being a northerner myself, not quite as north as where it was set, up in the northeast. But it was amazing. And that is a film that I've picked up on Blu-ray recently, actually. Haven't watched it at home yet. Oh, but I can't wait to. When I think about films that are coming out over the next few months, Bone Temple is the one that sticks out for me. It comes out in January 2026. It is my most anticipated, not just of the next few months, but for next year, for 2026. And the fact that we get it right at the start of the year blows my mind. We've got Nia DaCosta who's directing it. She previously did the remake of Candyman, produced by Jordan Peele. She is so clever. I loved that remake of Candyman. We're expecting something very brutal, very gritty with Jack O'Connell's character. And I'm just excited for a return to brutality, essentially. So yes, that was a massive highlight for me. So 28 years later, one of my top films of this year. Cannot wait for Bone Temple. A film that really surprised me, considering I am not a slasher girly. I think I've said it on the pod before. They just don't really do anything for me. Like, I love Halloween, I love Scream, I love Friday the 13th, The Nightmare on Elm Street, blah, blah, blah. They don't scare me, I suppose, is probably why they're not one of my top subgenres. But a slasher that came out in the summer is Clown in a Cornfield. And I hadn't read the book. I didn't really know anything about it. Like, I went in pretty blind, to be honest. And considering I had trashed Heart Eyes from earlier in the year because it was too cheesy, too predictable, too ridiculous, I had a fucking blast with Clown in a Cornfield. It was cheesy. It was ridiculous. It was predictable. And I loved it. So I really need to think about what is the difference between Heart Eyes versus Clown in a Cornfield that made me love one and not the other. And I think that might help me suss out which slashers I might enjoy more. And we'll touch on slashers in a little bit, actually, because I have some questions to ask you. So yes, Clown in a Cornfield, I really did enjoy. Now, one of the things that we've had a lot of this year is sequels. And some better than others is what I will say. One of those that was perhaps not so much on the better side of things is Megan 2.0. Now, I'm probably being a little bit unfair because I fucking hated Megan, the first one. I thought it was a piece of dog shit. And I hated Megan 2.0 even more. And I know that they had purposely switched more into this sort of fantasy, Tron, Terminator kind of vibes with Megan 2.0. AI is bad, no shit, Sherlock. But I just hated it so much. So that won't be one that I own on physical. It absolutely will not be one that I watch ever again. Good riddance. And I hope to God we do not get a Megan 3.0. Now, another sequel, but also a bit of a requel, sort of like they did with the Scream franchise, was I Know What You Did Last Summer. This was one that I got to see a little bit early. I got to go to Sony's head office, which was a load of fun. Took my very good friend Sam with me. We had a blast. It was a very hot day back in the summer. I will say, as an aside, and this is probably a completely separate talking point, you might think when you get to go to early screenings that it's going to be a room full of very much like-minded people that are into the film, anticipating the film, there to do a job. That's certainly mine and Sam's mindset, who came with me. What we have found, and certainly after going to a few more screenings this year, and it happened in particular at the I Know What You Did Last Summer screening, is that these companies, rightly, who hold the screenings, invite a lot of influencers. And that's because they can influence. They have a huge audience and an audience that will listen to them. So they get invited along, rightly so. But they don't know how to fucking behave. They do not know how to behave. It was made really, really clear to us that phones have to be away. Like, we have to put them in a pouch so we can't access them. So there's no photos or recordings or anything like that. It's really, really locked down. As soon as we went and put our bums on the seats in the screening room, one of the girls whipped a second phone out and started taking pictures, like selfies and stuff. And I know she's only taking selfies, but if that wasn't bad enough, she was then talking all the fucking way through the film. And then there were two guys that were in front of us that would not stop yammering on. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on in the fucking film here. Shut the fuck up. So, thankfully, it didn't impact on our experience of the film so much. This is another one where, is it film of the year? No, it isn't. Does it have ridiculous elements? Many. But is it a fun little requel? Yes, I think it is. I think it had some great nostalgia in the film for fans of the original I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I am one. And I think it's just silly horror. And there's always got to be room for silly horror. I'm now going to talk about a film that I walked out of, which I put a video out at the time after watching this film, or most of this film, talking about the fact that I've only ever walked out of a cinema twice in my life. The first time was because there was a drunk guy behind me threatening to unalive me. So I thought it was best to leave at that point. And then the second time is when I paid money to go and see David Cronenberg's The Shrouds. And that pains me to say, not just because I don't ever walk out of the cinema, but because it's a David Cronenberg film. I love David Cronenberg, but the man did not have his head screwed on for this film. It was not only poorly acted, I compared it to Tommy Wiseau's The Room, like, oh, hi, Mark, but it was offensive. It was completely misogynistic. And if you want a bit of insight into why that is, go check out my socials. I am not going to get into this film again, mainly because I don't want to give it the airtime because it does not deserve it. So yeah, I ended up walking out of the film with, I think it was 25 minutes to go. And that's how offensive it was. Thankfully, one of the films that I saw not long after that was Together. Neon's Together with Dave Franco and Alison Brie. So real life couple playing an on-screen couple. Didn't know what to expect with this. In typical Neon fashion, they don't tend to give a lot away before a film is released. And I was really pleasantly surprised, actually. It was kind of icky. It was really funny. It was creepy in parts. And it has a great story as well. And I think I would say this is a film that, regardless, if you're in a relationship, regardless of where you are in that relationship, if you've been together 30 years, if you've been married for 10, if you've been dating for a couple of years, or if you are just starting out, this is a film that every couple should sit down and watch together, because wherever you are in that journey, I think it will make you reflect on some of the behaviors that you have in your relationship. And certainly when I sat there and thought about my own relationship, but also past relationships and my behavior and their behavior, it's just a lot of food for thought, if I'm honest. And some couples could really do with that, is what I'll say. So highly recommend Together. I don't think that's got a physical media release, actually. So, but that will be coming home with me when it does, because I thought it was stunning and I really, really want to watch it again at home. Another film that I absolutely loved is Weapons. Zach Cregger's Weapons. So he's the guy that did Barbarian, and then he comes up with Weapons, which is batshit. It's absolutely batshit brilliant. And again, a film that really didn't give an awful lot away based on the trailers. All you know is that a bunch of kids who are in the same classroom at school get up at 2:17 in the morning, go out the front door and disappear. That is all they gave us from the trailers. And what it is, again, I'm not going to spoil anything because it is still a relatively new movie and people might not have seen it. What it is a really great old school horror story. And go into it as blind as possible. I'm almost glad that I'm not doing a deep dive video on this because it would just spoil it for people. You need to watch this not knowing where the story is going to go. There are some iconic characters in there. You've probably seen and heard people talking about Gladys. She is the absolute star of the show. I am in love with her. I have cosplayed as her. As an aside, one of the reasons why I was so busy is because every October now, seemingly, I do 31 days of cosplays, and Gladys is one of the ones that I dressed up as in October. So if you haven't seen my cosplays, do make sure you go to my Instagram and check that out. But yeah, absolutely loved Weapons. Another film that I really did not expect to love, just because I'm not a huge Trauma fan. I'm kind of indifferent to it. But the Toxic Avenger remake, I got to go to a private screening in Soho, which was lovely. And I got to chat to so many people that I would now consider friends just at that screening alone. Toxic Avenger was just fantastic. I know that Peter Dinklage doesn't necessarily play Toxie in the costume. It's Louisa Giesman, can't remember her last name, but she was phenomenal. It's just silly horror. It's got all of the elements of Trauma, of 80s horror, of like those pops of neon and the gore and the daftness of it. But it was fantastic. And I think that is due to be released at the end of the month. So again, I'm going to be picking that up on physical so I can watch it at home. And then I'm going to apologise now because the next 5 films that I'm going to talk about, I went to events for every single one of them. Some of the films are good, some of them really are not. But one of the ones that I had an absolute blast at is The Conjuring Last Rites. Now, again, is this film of the year? No. Is it a sequel in a franchise that we've had a million of this year? Yes, it is. But it was a brilliant event. We had a Q&A before the film with a couple of the stars from the film. Can't remember their names, so I'm not going to try and remember. But I thought it was a really reasonable ending to the Conjuring franchise. I know a lot of people have got a lot of beef with it not being as scary or not being as true to that very first original Conjuring film, and I totally get all of that. What I wanted from it was the emotion. So bringing the Warrens' story to a close. And that's what we got. So I was perfectly satisfied. And one of the best things that I got from that event is I got to meet a little girl called Molly, who is a star in the show. I think she's 12 years old. And she is a little superstar, okay? And what I realized is me and her come from the same hometown. And me, her, and her mum got chatting at the event, and I found out that they were going to be doing a screening of The Conjuring Last Rites at my hometown's cinema. And we decided that what would be great is to do a Q&A with Molly before the screening of the film. And they asked me if I would host that. And of course, I said yes. So that was a really, really big deal for me. It's not something that I'd done before. It is absolutely something that I would do again. Yeah, it was nerve-wracking, but it's something that I really want to do more of in the future. So it was a really proud moment for me. And one of the best things that I got to do was announce to Molly in front of an audience that she'd won an award at a film festival for, I think it was like Best Young Actor, which was amazing. She is also now starring in a Disney short for Christmas. Like, this girl is just going from one thing to another to another. So do keep an eye out for her because she's just incredible. And speaking of incredible, a film that I loved, didn't expect to love, but cannot wait to watch again is The Long Walk. Again, got to see this really early. I got piss wet through in the middle of London, so I looked like Shrek. Literally, my hair and me looked like Shrek by the time we went in and sat down. And of course, that's the one event where I'm asked to do an interview pre and post the film. Of course, when I look like an absolute mess. But I blubbed my eyes out to this film. I had never read the novel. However, can confirm I've done that now and loved it just as much as the film. There are some slight differences between the film and the book by Stephen King, under a pseudonym at the time of writing that. But it was fantastic. emotional, way more gritty than I thought it would be, but brilliant all the same. The day after I watched The Long Walk, I went to a screening of Good Boy. This is from Shudder, and this is a ghost story all told from the perspective of a dog. Indy the dog, who absolutely needs to win awards because I have not seen animal acting like that since Flipper or Free Willy or Skippy the bush kangaroo. Amazing. It's a very short film. I think it was less than 90 minutes. It might have been about an hour actually, but fantastic all the same. Like real spooks in there, some great jump scares, and I cried my eyes out at the end of that one as well. So I had 2 days between The Long Walk and Good Boy back to back, crying my eyes out in a cinema. Now from those giddy highs to terrible lows. And unfortunately, the next two films I'm going to talk about were absolute trash. And what made it worse was I travelled to London for early screenings of both of them. So not only was it a waste of my time, but it was a waste of money as well. And I fucking hated the films. First one being Strangers Chapter 2. Took my friend Celebro to this. We had a great time at the event. I will say that they went above and beyond with this event. It was very fancy, felt very underdressed for the situation, but unfortunately it did not balance out how god-awful this film is, to the point where the audience was practically booing what was happening on screen. I have never been to an early screening where everyone has been invited to go and see this film where people are booing and shouting out, "Oh, come on, what the fuck?" That is how bad it is. And again, if you want a bit of a review on that film, because like I said, it is very recent still, then you can head over to my socials and check that out, because I do not want to talk about this film. Much like the last film that I'm going to mention, which is Shelby Oaks. Oh, so this is Chris Stuckman's film. It's about a girl, Riley Brennan, who is the host of a paranormal YouTube program. And while out investigating, she goes missing, as do her buddies. They turn up dead. She's still missing. Her sister is trying to look for her. It starts off found footage combined with mockumentary, and then goes into just straight filmmaking, still with some found footage elements, still with some mockumentary elements. It was a fucking mess of a film. I think the premise was really in there. I think Chris Stuckman has a load of promise, and I have absolutely no doubt that the next film he makes will be even better. But I just didn't get on board with it. I didn't like the characters. I thought the storyline was way too predictable, including the jump scares and the fake outs. So when you know that something's going to be a fake out, that's almost worse than knowing that it's going to be a jump scare. And it just didn't look great either. It just felt like there were like 4 or 5 different cinematographers that had worked on this film, and they were all arguing about how it should look and feel, which again is such a massive shame. I know that this had its premiere at Fright Fest last year, did not get a good response at all. Neon then picked it up. I think they did a load of work with Chris Stuckman, so this is the film that we got after a load of work. Just didn't do anything for me, unfortunately. I think some people will love it. I think they'll really get on board with it. I think they'll like the story. It has been described as a bit of a combination of, I think, Hereditary and The Blair Witch, which I can kind of see, but it's no way up there with those two films, but definitely draws some influences from there. So they are all of the films that I want to talk about. There is another film that is due to come out that I have been able to see really early, but I am going to do a separate episode on it closer to its release, and that is Primate. So this is coming from Paramount. They invited me down to Fright Fest to go and see this early, and I had a fucking blast with it. Really unexpected. Thought it was going to be a cheesy teen horror movie, which it is, but it's also brutal as fuck. And I cannot wait to watch it again. And I cannot wait to talk about this in more detail. So keep your eyes peeled for that. So yeah, that is a bit of a whistle-stop tour through a load of the films that have come out. We've still got a few that are due to come out this year. So like I said, I'm going to do an episode on Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. I'm going to see Osgood Perkins' Keeper on Friday. And like Longlegs was one of my top films of last year. I loved it so much. I went to see it 3 times at the cinema. Loved The Monkey from earlier this year. I think I saw that twice at the cinema, and that's another one that I have got on physical media. So I've got really high hopes for Keeper. Not read anything about it. I'm going in as blind as possible. If I love it, I will absolutely talk about it on here. But I do want to round things off by asking you a question. And that is, I would love you to tell me in the comments what you want to see from me going forward. So I've explained all the different ways in which the channel is going to change a little bit over the coming weeks, but I'd love to know what you would like to see from me. Are you still going to want to see deep dives on new releases? Do you want me to do rankings of particular films? Just give me some ideas, basically, because I am still a baby at this game with this channel. And I'd love suggestions. I'd love to know what you would like out of this. I am absolutely still committed to doing deep dives into subgenres. And the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a poll up on my socials and also on my YouTube to ask you which subgenre you want me to cover next. Because I could go down the ghost route, like the paranormal route. I could go down religious horror route. I could go down slasher horror route if you really want me to. But I'm leaving it up to you. I want you to decide what exactly I'm going to cover. And if you want to feedback to me directly, you can do so in the comments on this episode, or you can get in touch with me on my socials. And that is something else that has changed. You can contact me on @ScaryZaraMary on TikTok and Instagram. Yep. @RateScary on Instagram. I'm closing the account down because that was another thing that I realized is why am I making work for myself by having another Instagram account? Just silly. So expect to see that account closing down soon. Just reach out to me on @ScaryZaraMary on TikTok and Instagram. But I hope this has been a suitable, if not slightly chaotic, catch-up episode. Cannot wait to get into all of the beautiful details of Frankenstein with you. I hope you're having a great week. And I'll see you with you soon. I'll see you soon.
It's all for you.
Beware the moonlights.
An excellent day for an exorcism.
I'm your number